This program is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, or cure any illness. Please speak with your doctor when starting a new health program.
Hey there, what's up people? Welcome to Wellness Talk. This is George Batista, your host and always your wellness advocate. Wellness Talk is the show that goes over the latest in health and healing and nutrition. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys had a really nice Thanksgiving holiday with your family and friends. I know I did, and I know I ate a lot. But don't we always in Thanksgiving? Yeah, it's funny because Thanksgiving is actually probably my favorite holiday, and mostly because friends and family are together and, many times in the same table and just talking and eating and having friends and family around and eating and having a good time is one of my favorite things to do. So anyway, it was a good one. But let's get back to the business of health and nutrition. So Platinum Nutritionals is the website, as always, where all the articles are housed. You can also support us on Patreon, so at the $5 level or the $15 level. Now, let's go over some of the articles that we're going to be doing this week. First, we have some new information on vitamin B12 and Alzheimer's prevention. And this is from the journal Cell Reports. This is actually from September 2021. And this is some interesting information because they're actually doing some serious research on B12 and cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, and all these types of things. And they're finding out some interesting stuff. So we're going to go over that. And this is why B12 is very, very important to have in your diet and make sure that you're not deficient. Then we're going to go over Resvertrol for skin, brain, and heart health. And this is from Wellness Resources, Linda Doberstein. We're going to talk about Resvertrol, which is the compound found in grapes and red wine, which is kind of an antioxidant, actually, and it's what grapes have inside them that helps them as far as defense when they're growing on the vines and that type of thing. But it's a fantastic antioxidant for people, as well as a longevity antioxidant, and has many, many benefits. So we're going to go over all those. Then we're going to talk about yoga. Yoga shown to improve anxiety, which a study shows, and this is from the New York University Langone Health and New York University School of Medicine. Those of you who listen to the show know that I've talked about yoga in the past. I did yoga for many, many, many years, and it's such a fantastic way to not only keep yourself in shape, but also keep your mind and body in shape in general. Well, this is a study that talks about anxiety and how yoga compares to some of the other therapies out there as far as anxiety goes. And finally, we're going to talk about what nutrients do your bones really need. And this is one of those things that is so interesting. This is by Dr. David Williams. And this is one of those things where, you go to a doctor and the doctor says, here, take some calcium because your bones are thinning. And that's pretty much all they tell you. And then, of course, you go out there and take calcium without knowing what other stuff you need. So you're not deficient in calcium, but you're deficient in all these other things. And your bones need way more than just calcium. So we're going to talk about exactly what your bones really, really need, as at least the most important things or the biggest players in your bone matrix. Your bones do need a lot, but we're going to talk about the big players and why you should be having them in your diet. So really good stuff today. So let's get started. So let's first start with the journal Cell Reports, September 2021. This is vitamin B12 in Alzheimer's prevention. Now, this paper, what it does, it shows that the researchers went on to show that in an experimental model, that vitamin B12 supplementation was able to prevent Alzheimer's disease and interrupt the key biological processes known to contribute to the development of Alzheimer's. So you know that when someone has Alzheimer's, they have been studying Alzheimer's for a very long time, and they found that there are certain triggers and certain things that they're seeing that are common to a lot of Alzheimer's patients, besides plaque and stuff like that. But there's ongoing inflammatory processes that have been shown in many Alzheimer's patients. So they're looking at that, and then they're looking at how vitamin B12 influences those inflammatory processes. So in line with these findings, there have been studies. Their studies are showing that the higher the blood levels of homocysteine are in your blood, the higher the risk of Alzheimer's disease in human studies. Now, homocysteine is kind of an inflammatory marker in your body. So if your homocysteine goes up and it remains high, that puts you at risk for not only Alzheimer's, but it puts you at risk for heart disease, and puts you at risks for strokes and things like that. Okay, so but B12 in your system, when you have adequate B12, what it does is recycles homocysteine back to an amino acid called methionine, and that helps to prevent the buildup of this inflammatory signal, homocysteine, and which actually brings things back to normal. So now, and this is part of that. B12 is part of that process. Actually, B6, B12, and folate are part of this whole process, but they studied B12 in this paper. So the study builds on the report, which was done back in 2010. Now, it stated that vitamin B12 may help protect against Alzheimer's disease, according to the recent study. So they go on to cite the research from a 7-year Finnish study, which followed 271 individuals. They were ages 65 to 69. Now, these folks didn't have any Alzheimer's disease. They didn't have any symptoms of Alzheimer's disease or anything like that. Okay. And what the report showed was that for every picomolar, and picomolar is just a unit of measure. So for every picomolar increase in blood level of B12, there was an associated 2% reduction in the level in the risk of Alzheimer's disease in this older population. Now, at the same time, each 1 picomolar increase in blood homocysteine level increased the risk of Alzheimer's disease by 16% in the same exact population. Okay, so in other words, the lower the blood level of B12, right, and the higher the homocysteine level, the greater the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Now, conversely, the higher vitamin B12 levels and the lower the homocysteine levels translated into a significantly lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. So think about that. Okay, that's a significant increase and decrease. I mean, they're seeing big things here. And now, part of the issue with B12 is that B12 deficiency is actually more common than people think, especially when people get older. Okay, when you're younger, it's a little harder to be B12 deficient. Now, your body does make B12 in its system if everything goes the way it should. There's a process with a compound in your system known as intrinsic factor, which actually helps your body produce B12 in the intestines. Okay, so the issue is that about 20% of individuals age 65 or over actually are deficient in B12. Now, there's various reasons for that. Okay, it could be a decreased secretion of stomach acid, because that does happen as people age. Your stomach acid goes down as people age. Another cause is B12. Another thing that causes B12 deficiency is antacid drugs such as Tums, Rolaids, what's called proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, things like that. And these are the things that are given by doctors to suppress stomach acid, right? So if somebody has some kind of acid reflux or something, physicians tend to give these types of drugs to bring down stomach acid. Well, unfortunately, what that does is it stops the absorption of B12 as well. So that's one of the side effects in that, okay? And obviously, because people have bad diets in general, or another group of people that can have B12 deficiency are vegans, okay, if they're not supplementing. So I always recommend to my vegan or vegetarian friends to always supplement with a good B12, whether it's a B complex or a multivitamin that has B12, because again, if you are deficient in B12, this is going to raise your level of homocysteine, which again can lead to development of, like I said, looks like Alzheimer's here. They're studying it and they're finding it, but it can also be heart disease. It could also be stroke, different things like that. Because remember, B12 is also needed for detoxification. And by the way, another thing that B12 and folate help with is also if you have high levels of heavy metals. Okay, so if you have high levels of mercury or lead, those types of things, again, that has to be detoxified by your body. If your B12s are way low, that's less of a detoxification that could be happening in your body. Therefore, heavy metal levels are high, which also can lead to things like dementia, cognitive decline, and Alzheimer's. So anyway, this is amazing news regarding B12. I'm hoping they do a lot more studies on this, but I've been told by other doctors and stuff like that they're trying to test B12 levels more now with people who have things like dementia, because I'm pretty, and again, I'm not a doctor here, but I'm just by going by common sense, I'm thinking that many people who do have symptoms of dementia, not all of them obviously, but probably a good percentage of them who have those symptoms are probably B12 deficient. So I don't think I'm going on a limb saying that, but again, that's just one guy's opinion. So anyway, very interesting news on B12. Next, we're going to talk about Resvertrol for skin, brain, and heart health. Again, this is by Wellness Resources, Linda Doberstein. Now, Resvertrol is a polyphenol, and it's one of the most important phytochemicals found in plants, right? Now, Resvertrol is well recognized as a polyphenol. It's it's found in the skin of red grapes, and it has the highest. The skin of red grapes is what has the highest concentration of Resvertrol and of any of all the food sources. Okay, now it's found in other things as well, but the grapes is the most. Okay, but they talk about what's called the French paradox, which is because the French obviously consumed a lot of wine, or have been known to consume a lot of wine in their country, because that's kind of more of a normal staple of their diet. They tend to have less risks of, heart problems and things like that. And they say that it's because of a lot of the Resvertrol that they're consuming. Now, Resvertrol is found in the red wine, the red grapes, those types of things. So it's really a key thing to have in the diet. So let's talk about what Resvertrol is good for. Okay, so first of all, Resvertrol is great at, it manages oxidative stress, it manages inflammatory pathways throughout the body, and is considered an anti-aging nutrient, is known to provide similar positive effects as calorie restriction. So it's similar to calorie restriction, they have found. Now, it helps with skin protection and rejuvenation. Okay, so they've done cell and clinical studies, and they've demonstrated that Resvertrol enhances skin health from menopausal changes. So those who are older, those women who are older and postmenopausal, that type of thing. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of oxidative stress in the skin, stuff like that. Well, Resvertrol will help with that. It also helps with immune resilience and metabolism. Now, Resvertrol and other polyphenols provide important what's called nutritional sustenance for immune resilience. Okay, so you have all these kind of cytokines that happen. Okay, these are inflammatory cytokines that happen, whether it's from bad diet or whether it's from all the inflammatory things that happen, all the toxins that you get in your body. Well, and you have these toxic inflammatory signals called interleukin 17, NF-kappa B, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. These are signaling inflammatory pathways. Well, these are signaling pathways in your body that have inflammatory components to them. So Resvertrol impacts those inflammatory pathways. Okay, and it's also been shown to favorably modulate activity of angiotensin. Okay, what's called the angiotensin converting enzyme, or the ACE2 enzyme. And you've heard a lot about the ACE2 enzyme these days, because that's one of the things that COVID affects in your system. Well, Resveratrol has been shown to favorably modulate this enzyme, okay? And it helps with this because this is key because the ACE2 enzyme is actually related to how your kidneys regulate your blood pressure, okay? So this obviously is going to, if this modulates that and helps that, then this may have a positive effect on kidneys and blood pressure and that type of thing. Now, Resvertrol also helps with brain and mood. Okay, so one of the benefits includes a supportive role in brain and mood health. Healthy, cognitive function and mental fitness with age is greatly impacted by mitochondrial health and energy production within your brain. Now, antioxidants are required to protect this mitochondria. Well, one of the things that Resveratrol does is it upregulates mitophagy and it helps to support what's called mitochondrial biogenesis, which means the birth of new mitochondria in your brain. Okay, so during times of cellular stress, Resveratrol helps to support the mitochondrial cleaning out of the stress chemicals in your brain. Okay, very, very interesting information regarding Resveratrol. Now, the one of the things that I would recommend is to make sure that you're getting Resveratrol as much as you can in your system. Again, that could be a diet, with grapes, especially the specific red grapes, if you can. All right. Wine is good too. I drink wine every now and then. A glass of red wine is very good as long as you're not overdoing it. But I think a glass here and there is fine. And by the way, Resveratrol in red wine ranges from 0.1 to 14.3 milligrams per serving. And in red grapes, it contains about 0.16 to 3.54 micrograms of Resveratrol per gram. Okay, just so you know what the kind of the intakes are. Now, if you would like to get more Resveratrol in your life, I would definitely check out Wellness Resources. They have two things. They have one that's a Resveratrol in general, okay, that I think it's called Resveratrol Ultra, if I'm correct. And then they have another product that's called Cardio Helper, which also has 200 milligrams of trans-resveratrol in it. Now, Cardio Helper is a fantastic supplement because it's one of those things that helps with not only circulation, it helps with heart function. It helps with all kinds of things related to your cardiovascular system, and the Resveratrol again is one of the big ones. So, in general, great thing to have in your diet for longevity, for your skin, for your immune system, for your heart, all different types of things. So Resveratrol, check it out. Definitely should have that. Next, we're going to talk about yoga. Yoga shown to improve anxiety. This was a study out of NYU School of Medicine. Now, it's interesting because, again, I've talked about yoga, how it affected my life. And, I was thinking about it the other day, actually. This was 2001, actually, when right before 9/11. This was probably, I think this, if I remember correctly, this was the weekend before 9/11. If I may be off by a day or two, but I think this was the Saturday before 9/11 happened. I went to a class in the city. Now, I used to do, if anybody knows anything about yoga, there is a style of yoga called Ashtanga, or 8-limbed yoga. It's a very difficult yoga to do. And I was doing it for a while. Well, the gentleman who invented the style of Ashtanga yoga, his name was Patabi Joyce. He came from India. He was, at that time, he was in his 80s. He came from India to do about 2 weeks of classes in New York City. So as soon as I heard about that, I said, I'm getting in here because, number one, he was one of the guys that I've read books about. And, he was doing this yoga since 19 whatever. I mean, from when he was young. And again, he invented this style that I was doing. So I had to meet the man, right? So I actually I actually signed up for the class, and I was able to get in. And so I took the class. Again, it was on a Saturday, right before 9/11. And all I remember, I know he was there, and he was the one that I was actually leading the class. And by the way, when he led the class, he did it all in Sanskrit or Indian. I guess I'm not sure how you would call it, but whatever the language is. But he did it in that language, so he counted in that language and whatever. But then he would also count in English, so he would kind of do it, back and forth. It was interesting. His grandson was there also, helping with adjusting people. But the one thing I remember from this was that after the class was amazing. I mean, I was sweating. I couldn't believe how much I was sweating. I think I lost like 5 pounds in that class. But everybody at the end of the class got in line to shake his hand. Now, he was considered kind of a guru. And there were people that actually went and bowed to him. I mean, this is how powerful the man was in this yoga. He's passed away, by the way. He passed away in his 90s. But I just remember people bowing to him. Now, I kind of didn't get that part. I was like, I'm not going to bow to him. I mean, I respected the man for everything he did, but I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. And it was okay. You didn't have to do that. But what I did do is I went up to him and I just kind of gave him, kind of this peace sign. And I think I may have shook his hand or something. And I just said, thank you. He was one of those people that when you were in front of him, there was an aura of peace that came from him. It was amazing. There was just this complete aura of peace. Like you could sit there with him, and the energy from him would just come to you, and you would feel like calm from him. But I don't know. It was just one of the most amazing experiences. But he was one of the people one of the few people in my life that I met that there was such peace exuding from this man. It was incredible. So I just thought that was interesting. And it was an interesting experience to kind of be in his presence, to take a class with him. And I could say I actually took a class with him. It was so. In any case, I just thought that was an interesting story. But so this article, what they did was they divided people into 3 different categories. Okay, and this was this was publishing online August 12th out of the Journal of the American Medical Association Psychiatry. Now, it was 226 men and women with generalized anxiety disorder were randomly assigned to 3 groups. So the 3 groups were cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, or Kundalini yoga, which is another type of yoga, or stress management education, okay, which was a standardized control technique. So what they did was after 3 months, they assessed how they were doing with their anxiety. And this is what they found. After 3 months, both the CBT and the yoga were found to be significantly more effective for anxiety than stress management. Okay? Specifically, 54% of those who practiced yoga met response criteria for meaningful improved symptoms compared to only 33% in the stress education group. Now, of those treated with the CBT, right, with the therapy, 71% met these symptom improvement criteria. Now, the other thing they said is after about 6 months, the CBT response remained significantly better than the stress education, while the yoga was no longer significantly better. So they're suggesting that the CBT may have more of a long-lasting effect on the anxiety disorder, right? On anxiety problems and that type of thing. So it's interesting. Now, what I would recommend now, and I guess I kind of understand that it kind of makes sense because as great as yoga is, it is a mind-body practice. It does calm you, both mind and body. And if you do it for a long period of time, you definitely notice a difference of stress reduction in general and how you handle situations in general. Now, the only thing is that I would think, and this is, again, just my opinion, that if you're dealing with a specific issue, then, and that you have to kind of clean up from the past, right? Because again, we all carry things that, you know, in our little computer bank in the mind that stays with us from our past that, you know, may or may not be resolved, right? So I would think that, you know, the behavioral therapy or those types of things would work better long term because they're addressing a specific issue that you need to clean up versus the yoga addressing the mind-body response in general. You know, again, that's what I would think, but why not, you know what? Why not do both, right? Do yoga to just, you know, make, you know, kind of calm the brain and calm the body, and then also do the behavioral therapy to address specific issues. I think it's a fantastic, you know, when you pair them together. Again, that's just my opinion, but I think that would be cool. But either way, yoga is fantastic for this. And it's one of those things that I think, you know, if you are into it, doing it, you know, it really, because I was one of those people when I was younger, I dealt with a lot of anxiety, and yoga really kind of helped me. It kind of helped me, calm myself and deal with situations much, much better. So I think this is significant for yoga. And if you guys want to try it, if you've never done it before, check it out, you know, whether it's on YouTube or a beginner's class, because if you do it consistently, you are definitely going to benefit from it. Okay. It's just my opinion. Okay. Last but not least, we're going to talk about bones. What nutrients do your bones really need? And this is by Dr. David Williams. Now, this is one of those things where, again, I've said it before, that, you know, there's so many things you can do as you get older to keep your bones in good shape. Okay. You know, one of the things I've seen, even with people in my own family who have not kept themselves in good shape, you're not using your muscles, you're not using your bones. And what happens? Things waste away. So it's a combination of you're underutilizing bones and muscle. Okay, and if those things don't get used, eventually they diminish, right? It's basically use it or lose it type thing, right? With a combination of not getting enough nutrients to make sure those things are getting to the right places. So let's talk about what your bones really, really need. Okay. So the first thing your bones need, obviously, is calcium. Okay. Calcium is a big player. Now, up to 99% of the body's calcium is found in the bones and the teeth, and it's top mineral, which is definitely needed by strong bones. Okay. But keep in mind that several factors can influence the ability of you to absorb and utilize calcium. Okay. So it could be anything from digestive problems, right? Lack of enzymes, digestive acid production, stuff like that. Eating disorders, certain medications, again, things like proton pump inhibitors that we've talked about, antidepressants, corticosteroids, all these things can actually, can depress the absorption of calcium. Hormonal imbalances, especially for women as they get older, because women tend to deal with hormonal imbalances way more than men do, right? Because again, you look at menopause, you look at all those things, even things like hyperthyroidism. Okay, so and by the way, vitamin D intake is very, very important. Why? Because vitamin D helps to absorb calcium. Now, the daily calcium recommendation is 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams. Now, keep in mind, to properly absorb that calcium, again, you need things like magnesium, D, and K to make sure that it's all being absorbed properly. Okay, and now as far as sources of calcium, as far as food goes, dairy, sardines, beans and lentils, and tofu for those vegetarians and vegans out there, whey protein, almonds, leafy greens also do have calcium. But again, it's not just about calcium. Okay, so always keep that in mind. Okay, I recommend coral calcium. Calcium citrate is pretty good too. They're more absorbable than the other forms of calcium that are out there. Wellness Resources has many fantastic supplements that have calcium in it. Now, Next one is magnesium. Now, magnesium is so important, but magnesium not just important for bones, it's important for everything. But it's at least responsible that we know of for well over 400 metabolic processes that happen in your body. Okay, magnesium deficiency is one of the biggest deficiencies on the planet right now. Okay, now without sufficient levels of magnesium, proper absorption and utilization of calcium does not occur as well. Okay. The daily recommended dosage of magnesium is about 350 to 400 milligrams. And I can tell you that most people don't get that much. So what are the dietary sources of magnesium? Dark chocolate, leafy greens, legumes, milk and yogurt, nuts and seeds, whole grains. All these things have a good amount of magnesium. If you're eating them every day, at least you're getting some. But magnesium as a supplement is definitely needed in my opinion. And again, magnesium absorption can get affected by stomach acid problems, right? Another one. Next one is boron. Boron is one of those things that people don't think about. Boron is actually is a protective antioxidant. It reduces the excretion of calcium and magnesium. It's also involved in the process of converting vitamin D into its more active form. Okay, because remember, vitamin D, when you get it, has to be converted. So it doesn't take for boron. It doesn't take a lot for boron, for it to be in your bones and stay healthy. About 3 milligrams a day is good. But again, most people only get maybe 1 milligram. Where do you get boron? Nuts, fruits, avocados, vegetables, grapes, prune juice, legumes, things like that. So boron is another thing you need. Next is copper. Now, copper is essential for the formation of collagen, which is a compound of bone and connective tissue, right? The recommended dose of copper is about 3 milligrams, but most people, again, get about 1 milligram. And keep in mind, it's a trace mineral. So how can you get copper? Avocados, chickpeas, nuts, mushrooms, beef liver, oysters, wheat bran, tofu. All those things have a good amount of copper. Now, keep in mind, though, some multivitamins don't have copper and or iron because they tend to compete when you get it in a multivitamin. So it depends on the multivitamin. You guys have to check the labels, that type of thing. So just something to bear in mind. Next one is phosphorus. Phosphorus is one of the major structural components of bones and teeth. Roughly 85% of all the body's phosphorus is in the bones. And by the way, it helps to maintain acid-alkaline balance in the body. Now, the recommended daily intake for adults is about 700 milligrams. Okay. Where do we get the phosphorus? Okay. You definitely get it in dairy, eggs, fish, meat, poultry, legumes, Brazil nuts, vegetables, oatmeal, brown rice, pumpkin seeds, stuff like that. Okay. Next is potassium. Potassium, your body, by the way, your body needs, in general, about 4,700 milligrams of potassium. Okay. Again, most people get probably 2,200 to maybe 3,200 milligrams. But potassium is extremely important. Without potassium, you start getting things like, muscle spasms, all these types of things. It could cause a major problem. By the way, and blood thinners can deplete potassium unless they're a potassium sparing blood thinner. So just keep that in mind. I suggest you talk to your doctor if you're on a blood thinner, because it can zap your potassium pretty fast. Okay, some doctors are good and they recommend people actually taking potassium with if they do have a blood thinner. Okay, so where do we get potassium? Avocados is number one. Avocados has a lot of potassium. So get your avocados. Bananas do have potassium as well, but you also get it in vegetables, beans and lentils, milk, yogurt, and nuts. And finally, zinc. Zinc is important. I've talked about zinc a lot on this show, but zinc is important for bone health because it stimulates what's called the osteoblasts, which is the bone building cells, and it inhibits the osteoclasts, which is the cells that break down bone. And you have those two going constantly, right? You have the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts. typically as you're growing, they're kind of imbalanced, back and forth, building and tearing down. As you get older, this is where you start to get more osteoclast activity, because more bones are being, stuff is breaking down. You don't get as much bone building because, again, you're getting older, and again, you're dealing with things like digestion and all the things. So it's kind of a circle, right? All these things are kind of work the same if you look at it as a whole. But roughly 75% of the 60 plus population doesn't get the recommended daily amount of zinc. And that daily amount is typically about 10 milligrams. But, they're generally recommended 15 to 20 milligrams, because you have to kind of deal with absorption issues on that. So, I always recommend getting a little bit higher, especially nowadays when we have COVID running around, viral stuff running around. Having higher zinc is definitely needed. Where do we get zinc? Again, beans and legumes, eggs, dairy, poultry, red meat. For those of you who are vegans or vegetarians, you may not get it there, but seafood and whole grains also have them. So make sure you're getting enough zinc in there. But if you feel like you are deficient in any of this stuff, definitely supplement with not only the multivitamin, but I would suggest, again, checking out Wellness Resources Bone Supplements. They have some great ones that have all these nutrients in it, okay? Because they're very, very important. And again, it's not just about calcium. Most of these bone supplements have calcium in it, but it would also have all these cofactors in it that will help it absorb. Because again, this is all part of the larger puzzle, right? These are all pieces that fit together with the larger puzzle. Now, on top of that, again, as I always recommend, the bone building matrix, right? Plus the strength training, keeping your bones and your muscles moving by doing some kind of strength training to get that, to get them nice and strong and keep them strong as you age. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the bone matrix that your body needs. Keep those things in mind. So that's the story for today. Hope you guys, this half hour, 40 minutes that I do is kind of hopefully for you guys an empowerment. Hope you guys learn some good stuff on here, because I want to make sure I get this information out. Even if I help just a couple of people, you know what? It's worth it for me, because there's just so much information out there that's being suppressed. And, guys like me and other folks out there are trying to get this information out to you, because otherwise you're not going to hear it. You're not going to hear any of this stuff from mainstream, especially now. You need to keep yourself healthy, because, all these new things that are happening every single day. Take control, take responsibility. That's what you need to do, in my opinion. All right, guys. So hope you guys got some good tips today. Remember, check out platinumnutritionals.com. Like, share, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, take responsibility for your health.